Hi, this is Scott with Specter Gear, and for today's product spotlight, we're going to be taking a closer look at our TCS 1 to 2 point convertible sling. And to kind of begin with, give a little history on this sling, we've had a number of 1 to 2 point convertible slings for many years in the inventory. The very first one was called the SCS sling, and it was designed by a Sutter County SWAT deputy. And he worked with us on the project, and we got that sling out, and it's been in existence for quite a while. The TCS sling is kind of an outgrowth of that development. It's called TCS, and that's Tulare County Sling. And we're located here in Tulare County. And what happened was our local sheriff's department, their SWAT team, which is called STEP, they worked with us on kind of modifying that design and advancing it down the road a little bit further. And consequently, this is probably the most developed sling that we have in the catalog. This thing has gone through quite a few iterations. We've finally gotten to the point to where we're happy with all the elements of it. But kind of in a nutshell, to give you an idea of what this is, it's actually a combination of two slings. It's a combination of, it's kind of part Viper, which is one of our 1 point slings, and our Viper is the one that features the two sections that have the bungee sewn internally inside to give the sling a little bit of instantaneous expansion capability. So it's a combination of that in terms of, bring that back out. It's a combination of that in terms of the webbing that's used for the main strap, which is this tubular, and of course the concept of having the bungee enclosed within that. And then for the front portion, it's actually, let me grab the other one here. Hang on just a second. It uses a modification of our Raptor sling. And in fact, this actually existed before the Raptor sling. The Raptor sling actually forms the element that we use for the adjustment strap on the Raptor sling actually grew out of the TCS, and then of course that's incorporated into this. So let me go through kind of how it works. And in another video, we'll show you how this thing works actually on the range, live fire, with hooked up to probably this same gun here. But the general principle is this. You have at its core, it's a 2 point sling. It functions just like a 2 point sling, so it's worn over the strong side shoulder and it exits out of the offside, under the offside armpit. Attaches at 2 points on the weapon at the rear and the front. It is designed, though, to be receiver mounted. This sling does not, I guess it could work just standalone as a 2 point sling attached to the rear, but you're not going to get that convertibility of being able to convert the sling from a 2 point sling to a 1 point sling if it's attached all the way at the rear of the buttstock. If you do that, what'll happen is it'll hang too low, and literally from a standing position, you might be dragging the muzzle on the ground. So the first element is that this is attached at the receiver, or at the rear of the receiver. And another important consideration to note is that you should, if you're going to do this, you're going to want to attach to the side of the receiver and not below the receiver. There are some mounts out there that I've seen. In fact, we offer one, is currently in closeout, however, that does have a QD socket at the bottom. Problem with this is when you actually use the thing, the web of your hand is constantly going to be fighting for space, because the way this is going to exit is kind of in this direction. So it's always going to be coming across your hand and crowding your firing grip. So you're going to want to mount this to the side of the receiver. Now, another thing to note, and we'll just, as we go through this, we'll go from the rear all the way to the front. You see that breakaway point right there. That may seem familiar to some of you that own a Specter Gear 1 point sling, in that we have these connection buckles. They are exactly the same buckle assembly, so that you can have one sling and have multiple weapons with attachment pieces already hooked up at the rear. And there's a couple of different ways you can go with this. You can go with the, obviously with the webbing attachment through a slot. You can go with our mash hook version or our QD version. And we have all three types, and those are, you'll see those within the catalog. And you can also, if you happen to change to a different type of receiver mount, rather than have to buy an entirely new sling, all you simply need to do is just buy a new attachment assembly, and those are available through the site as well. So that gives you 1 point where you can break away from this, and that allows you a bit of emergency release if this thing is in the 1 point format. But as we move forward, the next thing you're going to note is this steel. It's actually an expanded loop. I always tend to call this thing a D-ring. It is not a D-ring. The original design, however, did feature a D-ring, and the problem with that was that D-ring wasn't static enough, and it was a little difficult to do the hookup when you break loose at the front and go to hook up in the rear. With this, it's a much easier method, and of course, again, this is heavy-duty steel, and the opening is large enough, and as we'll see later, this is going to be the part where we're going to release this HK hook and connect at the rear, so I'll show that in a moment. Then moving forward to the actual main strap portion, with our Viper sling, each of the legs of this thing has 2 pieces of 1/4 inch shot cord in there. What we've done with this is, because we don't have the 2 legs, we've expanded this, and this has 3, and trust me, that is definitely plenty enough. But what this does, it allows you in the 1 point and even in the 2 point configuration, if you need just a little extra punch in order to move the weapon away from your shoulder, move it into a different firing position, you don't have to really change anything, and it gives you a good extra, I'd say about, I don't know, I'll go ahead and expand that, about 3 to 4 inches of expansion capability. And it also has a certain amount of shock absorbing effect. Although that's not necessarily the issue you might think it is, but it does make the sling a little more comfortable overall. The main strap is a continuous run of 1 1/2 inch wide tubular webbing. It's very durable, but it's very soft. It's a very, very comfortable webbing for a main strap. Then your main adjustment for the main strap, of course, is going to be this point here. You'll note that I do have that doubled back through the tri-glide. That's definitely a setup method that I suggest for all of you as well. Once you get this thing in the correct position, and you may, for some of you that are a bit smaller stature, you may have to trim the end. And of course, being an open circuit design, that's possible. But once you get the correct fit, you're going to want to go ahead and run that end all the way back through the tri-glide one more time. Moving to the center point on the sling, just like all of our 2 point slings, we feature an emergency release buckle. And what this allows you to do is, should you get entangled in your sling and you need to get out of the sling in a hurry, all you simply do is just hit that button, it breaks the sling, and then you can get free. It's an important feature to have. It's optional on 3 point slings, but it's included on 2 points. Now, moving up to the adjustment strap. In the 2 point configuration, as I've discussed in all of my other videos, you're going to want to set this thing up so it's in its center position. That's going to be your default run position, so that you have room, so that if you need to snug the weapon up so it's tight against your body, you can run it to its fully forward position. Or if you need to create space or make some adjustments once you get into the 2 point mode, or if you want to do a simple transition, a cross-shoulder transition, without converting it to the 1 point mode, that's still possible by running it out to its full length. It'll create enough space in there. And if you're interested in that, we have a series of videos on how to do cross-shoulder transitions with 2 point slings. And the part 3 of that video series does discuss how to do cross-shoulder transitions with receiver-mounted 2 points. Now, one difference you're going to note with this from, for instance, the Raptor sling, is the adjustment handle has this little piece of elastic here. Now, the reason for this is, if you're going to run this thing in the 1 point configuration, you may not want that handle flopping around. You can break this loose from its elastic, let it hang, and leave it like that for the remainder of your time with this sling. In fact, if you have no need for the elastic whatsoever, just take a pair of scissors, cut it, pull it out, and you're done. It's out of the way. But this does give an additional feature to folks that may want to keep that handle locked down, so it's not flopping around. Again, it's just an extra feature. If you don't appreciate the feature, cut it loose and it goes away, and it's never an issue for you again. Now, coming up to the front, you'll note that we have an HK type hook here, and this is where the sling actually begins to come into its own and do its thing. If you need to do, and the whole purpose of this is, you can do cross-shoulder transitions with a 2 point sling fairly easily, but there is a little bit of work involved. You're going to have to move your adjustment handle, create slack, and run the transition. If you are going to be entering what we call a high transition environment, and what we're talking about here is some kind of you're going from, for instance, a perimeter on an active shooter situation to actually clearing the building. And you know that you're going to have to move rapidly through a structure. And in order to do so, you're going to be addressing a lot of different corner turns. And you want a sling that gives you the maximum ability to cross shoulder from one side to another. And cross shouldering is just the act of moving your buttstock from your strong side shoulder to your offside shoulder and back again, so that you can properly execute corner turns or pie corners correctly and not expose yourself. In other videos, I go into exactly why that is and why that's an important thing. You should recognize the term and recognize the importance of doing it. So if you're going to be hitting a high transition environment, being able to turn a sling, and the 1-point sling admittedly is the king of cross shoulder transitions. So what we have here is all of the features of a 2-point sling and then some. And then the ability with a simple transition here of just simply removing that HK hook from your swivel or your loop mount at the front. I'll talk more about that in a moment. And just coming back to the rear to that steel ring and just snapping it down. Once you've done this, you now have effectively converted the sling to a 1-point sling. And it operates exactly like a 1-point sling. In fact, it operates a lot like a Viper 1-point sling. And then at that point where you're going back to normal operations, or maybe you need some muzzle control because you might have to climb an obstacle, you might have to suspect control, etc., and you want that muzzle to be get a little bit more control over that, you can just simply run it right back up again and you're good to go. And then of course you adjust your handle as necessary for fit. But that's kind of basically how the thing runs and how it operates. I didn't mention materials in this going forward. Of course, our webbing at the attachment point and the connection point here, and of course the center point, that's regular sling webbing. Again, we have our tubular webbing for the main strap, and the adjustment strap, of course, is made from the same pocket attachment ladder system webbing we use for MOLLE applications. Very lightweight, but very heavy duty and very abrasion resistant. So that's kind of the sling in a nutshell. Let me talk about one last consideration. When we talked a good bit about receiver mounts at the rear, let's talk about the front for a moment. One nice thing about this HK hook assembly here, hold on, here comes the obligatory cough. One per video, I guarantee it. So, nice thing about this is you can attach to something, for instance, like a regular QD swivel. Hopefully I still have it handy here. Let me, okay. There's another type of QD swivel that GG&G sells, and that is an angled QD swivel. I've used some of those before. There are also mounts out there that have a simple loop. Now, I keep using the term HK hook. This 1-inch type hook, the reason it's called an HK hook is because this is the hook that was popularized by Heckler & Koch when they were when they had their slings designed specifically for their MP5 and G3 series. One of the first production 3-point slings, by the way. And what they had at the front, let me grab an example. Hold on just a moment. So we've got this little MP5 here. And what I'm talking about specifically is this ring mount that's at the front. And this ring mount is optimized for this HK hook. And what I mean by optimized, and I want you to pay very particular attention, is the orientation of the actual ring itself. It's parallel with the ground, all right? Now, you can go, of course, two ways with this. You can run it so it's like a basketball hoop and the hole goes to the ground, or you can turn it like so. Now, the problem is if you turn it, you go to put this hook through, it binds pretty bad. So if you're looking for a mount for this and you want to go with a ring mount, you want to go with this system, look for something that has a hook so that the hole faces downward, because that is going to be your ideal positioning for this type of hook. Again, if this is turned vertically so that the hole goes to the front of the weapon, it will have a tendency to want to snag a little bit and bind right at that point. It'll still work, but you're going to run into some issues, and you have to picture this entire assembly turned sideways. It starts to bind right about there. Whereas this, we have full movement up and down when it's mounted in that orientation. So just something to think about. Let me get this out of the way, and we'll kind of wind it up bring it to an end. Let me set this down. Excellent. Okay, so that in a nutshell is your TCS Sling. Again, we'll have a live fire demo of this to show so that you can see that how this thing is actually operated on the range. And then beyond that, we will be covering the other slings in the series in the 1 to 2 point sling category. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we have the TCS, and then we also have one called the CCS, which is very similar to the TCS. Oh, and the SCS. Okay, well, with that, I've talked enough. I'll bring it to a close. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. And as always, these products are available at www.spectergear.com and manufactured right here in Visalia, California in the United States. So have a great day. Stay safe. Thanks for listening. Take it easy.